Dear guests, hello and welcome. Before the beginning, please turn off your microphones. Thank you. Today, we are the members of IZMIR Democracy University ELT Student Club having our 7th online session. And the topic is how to assess pre-service teachers' micro-teaching performances by our precious guest, Dr. AHMET ÖNAL from SÜLEYMAN University.
Hello again. I am BEGÜM ATSAN and student of the ELT department in IZMIR Democracy University. And let me now give you some brief information about this session. The moderator is Dr. NURDAN KAVAKLI, who is also our academic advisor at ELT department. The session is about 20-25 minutes long. And the QA sessions will be held by QA managers, me and my friend BATUHAN ATEŞ. You may prefer to shoot your questions in chat box, or you may use your mics if eligible. Also, at the end of our session, we'll take a family picture. And we'll inform you when it's time to turn your cameras on. Now, we'd like to kindly invite Dr. NURDAN KAVAKLI to start.
Hello, hi, one more time. We are here today for our 7th session of ELT Talk series of IZMIR Democracy University. So it seems like I gathered all of my PhD friends who are actually now my colleague. And today we are going to host the e-talk of Dr. AHMET ÖNAL from the Department of English Language Teaching from SÜLEYMAN University. And today's topic will be how to assess pre-service teachers' micro-teaching performances. So thank you and please welcome Dr. AHMET ÖNAL for his, I know, very fruitful speech.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening to everyone. First of all, I want to thank you, dear NURDAN, my friend, and your team for your great efforts in making such a great event during these unfortunate times. Can I share my screen?
Yes, of course.
Yes, you can see it. Yes, today I'm going to try to give a brief speech or talk about micro-teaching technique, which we use very frequently in our ELT departments. And the title of my speech is How to Assess Pre-Service Teachers' Micro-Teaching Performances. If you have a look at my outline, first I will briefly describe the micro-teaching technique, and secondly I will have a small talk about its importance in ELT departments. Then I will talk about how teacher trainers traditionally assess the students or pre-service teachers' micro-teaching performances. And finally, I will try to suggest a model for assessing the micro-teaching performances. The micro-teaching technique has been used all over the world in teacher training institutions for more than half a century, and at the moment, it's probably the most widely employed technique for providing pre-service teachers with practical experience. You know, practice is very important in our field. How does it happen? What are the stages? On the next slide, I have a figure about this. First of all, the student teacher is asked to prepare a lesson plan, probably on a pre-specified linguistic skill or language area. Then the student, the pre-service student or pre-service teacher, conducts his or her lesson in front of his or her advisor and friends, classmates. Then at the end of the teaching stage, the feedback session or feedback stage starts. As a result of the feedback stage, the teacher may ask, the advisor may ask the student to replan and reteach his micro-teaching to improve his or her skills. And finally, if it's done, a re-feedback or re-criticizing stage occurs at the end of the micro-teaching technique. This is how it's held generally or traditionally. But I should also mention that, you know, in our classes we have many students. For example, if I talk about SÜLEYMAN DEMİREL University, the average number of students in our ELT department classes is somewhere between 40 or 45. We have lots of students. It means that we have a time limit in conducting micro-teaching techniques. Due to such limitations, some stages of this framework may be modified or skipped. Then what is the importance of micro-teaching technique? We cannot speak of a balance between theory and practice in our ELT curriculums. I don't know if you would agree, but most of the time we instill theoretical knowledge into our students, but they do not have enough chance, enough opportunity to put their knowledge into practice, put the theory into practice. And micro-teaching technique provides and encourages students to put their theoretical knowledge into action in a classroom atmosphere. It's so important. If we do not do it, they will feel underprepared, or they will be left underprepared for their future profession, and they may perceive themselves not competent enough for their future professions. There is such a risk for their case. And yes, they can transform their theoretical repertoire into practice and action. They improve their lesson planning skills. They improve their decision-making skills, because when they are designing their lessons, they have to make lots of decisions. It also improves their self-confidence. This is another benefit of micro-teaching technique. Also, it improves their reflection skills, because when they conduct their micro-teachings, after the feedback session, they reflect on their experience and they try to improve their next micro-teaching in a better way, in line with the feedback they are provided by their friends or teachers. Also, as Sarı Çoban Hoca has mentioned, they can reduce their deficiency in their teaching skills, and they can develop much more positive attitudes towards their future professions. Also, in terms of effective domain, it also has important benefits. They can improve their self-efficacy perceptions. They can decrease their anxiety level, as they do many micro-teachings during the department years, and it also improves their self-confidence. My third question here is, how do teacher trainers, we, traditionally assess micro-teaching performances? Most of the time, we have mentioned that there are lots of students in our classes, which means that we have limited time, so we tend to, you know, ignore the feedback stage. We cannot provide as much feedback as we would like because of such limitations. So limited time and opportunity for each student to perform are regarded as common problems. In response to these limitations, video recording their performances is a good idea, may provide you know, some solution for such problems, because in this way they can, after they finish their micro-teachings, they can watch their video recordings, and maybe they can share their video recordings with their classmates on maybe on the internet, on YouTube, and so on, and that they can get feedback from many different channels. It's a great opportunity for them. In this way, the feedback becomes more concrete, because if they do not have the video recording, they may forget about what they have done in the classroom because they feel so anxious during the experience. As they watch their videos, they can concretely see what they did good and what went well and what didn't go so well. Also, by watching their friends, their classmates' videos, they can learn about new strategies, new techniques, new activities to use in their classrooms. Yes. Due to the problem of lack of practice opportunities, we can argue that we should do something about this problem. And my suggestion is this. First of all, we should ask our teacher candidates in our classrooms, pre-service teachers, to record their own micro teachings. Maybe they can ask to do this to one of their friends, and we can ask them, we should ask them to watch their video recordings many times, and they can write a reflective self-assessment report after they watch their performances after their micro-teaching experience. When they are writing their reflective reports, we can ask them 3 questions. In fact, this framework has been developed by Smith in 1989. The first question is, what did I intend to do in this lesson? What was my intention? So they can describe their intentions. The second question is, what did I do? What happened in the classroom? So they can inform us about what has happened in their micro-teaching. And the last question is, what would I do differently if I were to teach this lesson again? In this way, they can confront and reconstruct their performance. And the last part of my speech is about a suggested framework for the assessment of micro-teaching performances. Important topic here is lesson planning and implementing what has been planned. So the second one is content of the activities, the third one, classroom management skills, the fourth one, selection and use of materials, and the last one is correction strategies. These are, in fact, the main categories, and each of them have some kinds of subcategories. In terms of lesson planning, the design of the lesson plan is so important because they have to make decisions, they have to design a proper lesson plan. In their lesson plan, they have some activities, but we should ask this question. Is the sequence or order of the activities okay for the classroom? What I mean is, they should start with the simple and they should go to the more complex activities. It should be in this way. The next one is transitions between activities. There should be smooth transitions between different activities. What I mean is, the previous activity should pave the way for the upcoming activity. There shouldn't be harsh transitions between different activities. In terms of the content of activities, the quantity of activities is important because sometimes students, have very few number of items in, for example, in a fill in the blanks exercise. It's not good. They should decide on the correct amount of activities. In terms of the level, difficulty, and duration of activities, it's also very important because, yes, the students in the micro-teaching are not real students. They are, in fact, the classmates of the pre-service teacher. And on the lesson plan, the levels of the students are specified most of the time by the pre-service teacher. For example, on the lesson plan, he says that the students are at A2 level. What about the level of activities? Are they really at A2 level? If they are not at the same level, at the proper level, there will be, or difficulty, there will be great problems in the implementation of lesson plan. Interests, appealing to the learner's interests. It's also very important. What I mean is, let me give you an example. In my classes, for example, I observe students. The students in the class, micro-teaching class, are their classmates, but they do not participate in the activity. And at the end of the micro-teaching technique, I asked them, why didn't you participate? And they said, it wasn't interesting, it was boring. So it's so important. If you want to include all the students in the classroom, your activities should be interesting for the students. And the pre-service teacher's competence in the content he or she is going to teach is also very important. If the pre-service teacher does not have self-confidence in terms of the content, there may arise great problems in the micro-teaching technique. You know, classroom management is a very crucial, very important skill. The first subcategory is classroom talk. You know, most of the time, teachers tend to talk the most in the classroom, but it's not a good idea. Who talks most in the classroom? We should consider this in the micro-teachings. Instructions given by the pre-service teacher, they are also very important. Are they clear? Are they brief? Are they at the correct level with the student's specified level, and so on? These are some of the important questions. Also, the body language, eye contact, tone of voice, I mean extra-linguistic and paralinguistic features of the classroom talk by the teacher. It's also very important. The next issue is L1 use. Should we use Turkish in the classroom? I don't know. We cannot speak of, you know, a question. If yes, how much L1 use is justified? It's another question. But we should also consider this aspect. Maybe it depends on the context, I don't know. And responding to students' questions, because in the classroom sometimes students ask very challenging questions, and if the teacher, if the pre-service teacher is not competent in the content of his lesson, there may be some problems. If he cannot answer the questions by students, you know, it won't be a good experience for both of the parties. And attracting the interest of students, motivating them to participate is also very important. You know, in our classes, in English language classes, we most of the time employ pair work or group work activities, but, you know, the teacher should organize the activity. Who will be the pair with whom? He just gives the instruction, form pairs, form groups of 4 students, but which 4? You should decide on this, because sometimes, you know, scaffolding, you match 2 students, one is at a bit higher level than the other one. If necessary, you should organize the pair work and group work activities as the teacher. And dealing with unplanned events, it's also very important. For example, you plan to use your computer in the classroom, but there's a technical problem. Do you have a plan B or plan C? You should consider this when you are preparing your lesson plan. The 4th category is in terms of selection and use of materials. Are the materials you use in your class authentic materials? Do you adopt them or adapt them? Do you modify them? Are they error-free? It's also very important. And do you make use of audiovisual materials, you know, colorful materials? It depends on the level, the age, the interests of students. But if you are teaching young learners, for example, you should have lots of colorful materials, visual, audio material, and also you should cater for, you know, different learning styles and strategies. If you are working with young children, you should have lots of body movements. You should let them move in the classroom, dance in the classroom. It's very important. And finally, correction strategies. You know, the teacher should be able to provide constructive and instructive correction in the classroom. To do this, first of all, the teacher should be able to monitor the students on task. For example, the students are doing some kind of group work, it's okay, but what is the teacher doing? Is he sitting at his table, or is he moving around the classroom? Is he monitoring the students when they are doing something? He should do it. He should be listening to them, and he should be able to help them if needed. I observe from my students that sometimes, because of anxiety, when they ask a question, they do not focus on the answer provided by the student, but they should be listening, and if they can notice any kind of mistake in the answer given by the student, they should provide correction. So noticing the mistake is the first step. Then the teacher has 2 options after noticing the mistake. Should he or she ignore the mistake, or should he or she, should the teacher correct the mistake? In some cases, you know, if the focus of the activity is on fluency, ignoring the mistake may be a better idea. But if the teacher decides to provide correction, another question arises. When will you provide correction? Immediately, or after the activity or after the lesson finishes. Another important question is who will provide the correction? You as the teacher, or the student who makes a mistake, or another student, he or she also decide on this. And another topic here is overcorrection. If you have a look at the saying by Kaplan, give a small boy a hammer and he will find that everything he encounters needs pounding. So I also observe this very often in my classes. Some pre-service teachers are like this. I should find a mistake and I should immediately correct it for the sake of, even for the sake of fluency. So it's not a good kind of, error correction strategy. It's, discouraging for most of the students. And finally, I don't know how much time, I believe it's on time. I conclude my speech in this point. As a conclusion, we as teacher trainers need to focus more on the ways in which students think rather than how they behave, because their inner mental processes are describe how they think. If we cannot, see inside of their brains, we cannot know what they are thinking about. So it's so important. In line with Sean's three-part classification of reflection modes, reflection in action, reflection on action, and reflection for action, the model I have suggested encourages pre-service teachers to employ all three modes of reflection in their self-assessment reports. So it's beneficial, I believe, because rather than relying solely on their memory, they have the video recordings. They can even watch their own performances 10 years later. It's possible. In this way, they can easily see their weaknesses and strengths, and they can, take precautions about their weaknesses. And finally, I believe that the integration of video recording micro-teaching technique into teacher education programs may encourage students, may enable our students to increase their self-confidence. They start to feel gradually less anxious as they do many micro-teachings. They can gain insight into their linguistic and didactic skills. They receive feedback from multiple sources, not just from advisors, but also from their classmates. They get the chance to see themselves in action. They are the teacher in the classroom and they can see it clearly. And finally, by watching their classmates' video recordings, they can learn new ideas to use in their classrooms. I would like to thank everyone for their participation. If we don't have enough time for your questions, you can email me. And I also want to thank Dr. NURDAN KAVAKLI and her great team for their efforts in these unfortunate times.
Thank you very much.
If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmet Ünal. It seems like, I think 2 years ago we met in a workshop in Sparta, right? So it is also very nice to see you one more time. I missed you, my friend. So thank you very much for this fruitful session. And my special thanks go both to you and to my dear team too. And we have some questions. My QA managers will manage the QA part. And I think we have enough time, at least 10 minutes for QA session. So I'm going to let the stage to my dear team. Thank you very much.
Okay, so before going to the QA sessions, could you please turn on your camera so we can take our family picture?
Of course.
Thank you.
Dr. Ahmet, could you please stop sharing your screen so that I can see the faces? Okay. So
yes.
Be ready. I'm going to take it. And one more time. Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Önal. That was an important speech. Now it is time for the questions. Let me check them. The first question is coming from Ferhat Karanfil. How long is each micro-teaching session for each pre-service teacher? Do you teach or present something to their peers?
In my opinion, it shouldn't be less than 40 minutes, but I have mentioned the crowdedness, the problem of crowdedness in our classes. So in our case, most of the time it's nearly 25 minutes or half an hour, including feedback session. But
Okay.
what I mean is we should try to give them as much time as possible, right? Mm-hmm. If possible, if you have a manageable amount of students in your classes.
Thank you. So the second question is from Suna Kalın. She says that, Dr. Önal, do you use e-postal?
Yes, I try to use e-postal, but you know, in the e-postal there are nearly 200 descriptors. The exact number is 195, and I once is part of self-assessment descriptors of the e-postal, and I have you know, adapted a kind of criteria. There were about 60 items in the criteria. It became more manageable in this way.
Third one is coming from Nihat Erdemir. Dear Professor, would you consider peer assessment written anonymously in class or self-assessment after watching their video recording more useful?
It depends on the classroom, because it was 3 years ago. If we have time, I will just tell you about an anecdote. I had peer assessment, not unanimously. It was open, okay? And 2 students, both of them were unfortunately females. One of the students stood up and said something like this. Hey, you remember last term you criticized me about my micro-teaching, and I have watched your micro-teaching now, and you did this and that. It wasn't a nice atmosphere. So it depends on the context. If the students, you know, can think reflectively, they are open to criticisms, you can integrate both of them, peer assessment and self-assessment, as a result of which also you as the professor or advisor provide some kind of assessment. So you have 3 different sources, it becomes more reliable. Mm-hmm. That would be the ideal, I believe. Yes, I see Salman Karakush. If
Thank
they
you.
are friendly,
And okay, so another question from Ferhat Karanfil. How about the micro-teaching in COVID times, in distance education?
Yes, it has become something like a dream for us. I'm just kidding, but I asked my students to do something like this. Okay, call on all the students, all the children from your apartment into your flat, teach them an English lesson, video record it and send it to me. But it was impossible, I know. So I don't know how we can conduct micro-teachings, because face-to-face communication and interaction is more important. And these days it's impossible.
Yes.
Another question is coming from Mr. PhD. Do you know any framework or any checklist for micro-teaching?
Yeah, there are lots of frameworks, but it depends on the context, the aim, what you focus on, the course you are giving, because which course are you giving? Teaching language skills or teaching literature? it depends on many different factors, but I believe that the best way is designing your own criteria in your own context, or maybe adapting, not adopting, but adapting one checklist or rubric in your own context.
Okay, thank you. If you have any other questions, I will let my friend to finish the session. Any other questions?
No, I guess.
No, I guess.
Okay.
Then Begüm,
So
please
thank you
go on.
one more time for joining
you.
us and sharing our excitement today. And our special thanks go to Dr. AHMET ÖNAL, and hope to see you again. Please follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook as İDU ELT for the upcoming updates. So thank you.
So bye for now. Thank you, Dr. Ahmet Önal, one more time.
Thank you too. Thank you and your team.
Tell my dearest greetings to your children.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.